Anthony, it's a rather chilly January here at Park Hall. You're from Australia. People assume that it's sunshine and blue skies every day, but in Tasmania, where you're actually from, it's not quite like that.
Well, no, that's right. It can get quite cold during the winter, and my mum's actually over from Australia for the first time in about 3 years, so she's left it. It's actually quite warm in the summer there, so it's about 28, 29 there now, and then she's come over to here in the cold in England, and unfortunately she'll probably have 2 winters, so it's probably about this temperature in Tasmania in the peak of winter during that time, so it can get quite cold there. So I'm probably more used to the cold than what people would say, yeah.
And you didn't arrive from Australia straight to the New Saints. You had a period, of course, elsewhere in English football. But you've been here for a while now. Time certainly flies. It seems like 5 minutes when we were doing our first interview. How's it going for you overall in a general sense?
Yeah, no, good. I mean, you're right in saying that, Revs, as well, that the time has flown so quickly. I mean, I think I come in around the start of April, and it was a quick 10 games in 6 weeks during that time in a crazy period in terms of getting to know the squad and learning the players and learning the league, etc. And obviously done a lot of research before I got the job, but that time flew quickly. Then in the off-season we had 2 weeks off. We wanted to give the players more time off, but unfortunately we had to get ready for Europe, and that proved to be the right decision in the end with the great European run that we had. And then the league started straight away when we got knocked out of Europe. So suddenly here we are come Christmas, and feels like we haven't had time to have a breath for myself, for the staff or for the players. But no, I must say, so far my time has been great. I've really enjoyed it. Everyone's made me feel most welcome, not just at the club, by the way, but in terms of the league and getting to know the people in and around the league, from like the other teams, the other clubs, the other, like the Scorio guys who were there as well. So yeah, I must say everyone's made me feel most welcome and really enjoying my time so far.
And based on your time at the likes of Woking, Grimsby, the England setup, West Ham United, Southampton, how does Welsh football fit in with that in terms of quality on the pitch? And if so, it's better than you expected. Has that been a surprise to you?
Yeah, well, I was quite familiar with the level with the research that I'd done beforehand. I wouldn't have taken the job without knowing the level and the players, and not just of TNS but of the Welsh League in general. So I think what's impressed me so far has been the level of coaching, the level of tactical detail from the opposition teams, although being some of them part-time. I think the level of detail on that's been really good. We have a real tactical challenge most weeks in the league, and I think that's really impressive. A lot of UEFA Pro licensed coaches will come through that Welsh system, and really think there's some good managers in this league, so that's really impressed me. I think in terms of the games, there's probably a varied degree of games and varied degrees of levels. So a lot of people ask me, where would the Welsh League sit compared to the English League? And I think some games would look at really high level, and other games would be below probably where the level where you would think it would be at. So I think it's more probably on individual players. I think there's players here definitely at TNS that could play League 2 or could have had a League 2 career, some that could even have pushed into League 1, and then others who could have played in the National League as well. I think it'd be really interesting to see how a TNS team would do maybe in some of those leagues, and a lot of people ask me those questions. So I think, yeah, probably varied. I think there's different players could play at different levels, but yeah, I've been really impressed with definitely the coaching and the tactical battles each week in the games.
And as far as this season's concerned, the club certainly hit the ground running with a successful European campaign, the best that the club has ever had. 4 wins, 1 draw, 1 defeat. Yeah. Did that surprise you in any way, or were you expecting to have such a great run in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily you don't expect it, but one of our goals and targets at the start of the season was to try and improve on last season in the league and try and become second by a small margin, so we want to try and push on and improve on that. But the second one was to improve the results in Europe and go further than maybe what the team did last year or over the last couple of years. I think we probably had a very tough draw as well. I think in that first game against Glentoran was really tough, and I'd obviously done a lot of work looking at the teams that you would play in Europe and the type of games and the style and the tactics and the physicality you would need. And that was probably more like a good old-fashioned FA Cup game, I felt. It was 2 teams who were proper going for it, and Glentoran were big and physical and get the ball in the box, and a tough away game there that we drew 1-1 and really held in that, and that set us up to bring them back to Park Hall, where we fancied our chances against anyone really in Europe. So I think that was a very different game compared to the other 2 European games that we faced, which were more sort of the European style football that we would expect. So I think it was certainly a good learning curve for myself, having my first experience of Europe. But yeah, I was really impressed with the players' work rate, their attitude during that pre-season. We worked very hard that pre-season. We had a good 6-week pre-season, like I said before, with only 2 weeks off. And to be able to come in and produce those results. And probably what was new to myself was, and not that I underestimated, but you really learn it when you're in it, is how you have to get your team to peak so early in the season. That's never really been a theme. You want to start the seasons well, obviously in England and other leagues, but you've got a little bit of time to get into it before you have maybe the big FA Cup runs or your playoffs, or if you're trying to survive relegation, for example, your bigger games are to the back end of the season. So to really try and peak for that first game after pre-season was a real challenge, and one that I learned a lot from and enjoyed as well.
You inherited a quality squad. You made 4 great signings, but also not afraid to blood the youngsters either. And particularly in the European campaign, a number of them had their first taste of European football.
Yeah, one thing I must say on the signings, I think they've all come in and obviously done well. But I think character-wise, we've made sure that we've recruited the right people, and that's really important. And it really is a team effort. There's a lot of work that goes in behind it, whether it's myself, whether it's Sarge, whether it's Gary Brabham, whether it's the scouts and recruitment people that we have working for us as well. I think that's really important to mention. It's a real big team effort and not just on one person's shoulder. And that's why I've certainly come in with that role of head coach to open that up so everybody's involved in the recruitment process, which I think you need to do nowadays with how big that sort of part of the club is, of any club in football now, in full-time football. And then, like you mentioned, the young ones, I think it's so important. I mean, with my background of working in academies, I do believe in young players. We have brought down the average age of the squad. I'd have to check exactly what those statistics are, but we unfortunately did have to let some very good past players at TNS and really good people go that I'd worked with that season. It was really tough, being like Greg Draper, who still works in and around the academy and the foundation, Simon Spender, who's still in the academy and works with the first team too, Jamie Mullen, who's a top player and top pro, and doing well at Connors Quay, respectfully there, that it was hard to make those decisions on those players because they'd been here for a long time, even some of the young ones, Ryan Harrington and that sort of thing. So we made those tough decisions, but we always try and look inside the academy first for those players. So ones that have made their debuts in Europe, as Lewis Rees has come on in games off the bench and impacted. Bo Cornish came on 3 times in Europe, which is a big achievement for him. Morgan Dakin started the first game of that European campaign, probably to his surprise and our surprise, but he did great and did really well, and you can't take that away from him. So to be able to bring those young players through, like a Jake Canavan, who's a second-year scholar, and we always try and make sure that we keep the statistics of how many of the young players train with the first team. So today, for example, we had 2 young goalkeepers come in and train with us, one an under 16, one a first year, I think, scholar as well. So we regularly get those younger ones in, and sometimes they come in and then they come out, and then some stay in if they do well, and we're always trying to drip feed them in, so we know it's important that the first team staff know who the younger up and coming scholars are and whether they can make an impact, because the idea of the academy is to get those players through and blooded into the first team.
The question could be asked, of course, by those outside of the club, why bother with young players? Why not just go out and buy the professionals that are now at the top of their game?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons for that, really, and I've seen that quite close hand at Southampton and at West Ham, 2 successful academies with 2 very different ways of getting those players into the first team. And I think the answer is, I think you need a bit of both. So you need some players that are ready to hit the ground running, ready to play in Europe, ready to play in the league and try and push to win silverware, which you need to do when you're at TNS. So you need those players to come in. But then for the younger ones to come through, I think to give, 1, for an identity with the club as well, 2, to make sure that you're getting the best players and training them and working them to play through and come through. And then ultimately that can also save you money in the long term as well, because if you've got the mixture of youth team players with the ones that you've maybe spent more money on than you have with the young players, then I think the balance of that's really important. I think it's important as well because you want the way that we want to play and the style that we play with, a high tempo pressing game, but where we dominate the ball and want to create chances and get forward, that you need young players who are going to buy into that as well, albeit with the experienced players like the Maz, the H's, do you know what I mean? Those type of players who have John Routledge's, Redmonds, who are over 30, but equally need those younger players around them as well. So I think the balance of 2 is very important. I don't think you can have one without the other. But I think with probably the background I've had, and you look at Chris Sargent, who's head of academy as well, working with the first team. We have Cy Smith and Simon Spender, who work with the scholars, but then one of them coaches with us every day too. There's a real probably, I think, a seamless transition into the first team. And if you're a young player, you've got a real opportunity to come and make the grade at TNS, which is very tough because there's pressure on you to win every week. We want to improve in Europe as well, and it's a tough ask to come in and play here. But hopefully, whether we give them that experience to play here or not, we've set them up to hopefully have a career in the Welsh Premier League, and hopefully if they don't make it with us, then they can go and play for other clubs there too.
And as a coach, do you find it easier to work with younger players as opposed to the seasoned professionals, because they're more open to take on board what you want them to do, as opposed to the more long in the tooth footballers who have perhaps become more set in their ways?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was wondering if you're going to ask me this question, because it's quite an interesting one, because not to sit on the fence at all, by the way, but sometimes yes and sometimes no. So for example, the older players that we've ended up keeping here and for last season and this season are very receptive to what we're trying to do anyway, and how we're trying to play and what we're trying to put in is very similar to how they play, so it fits in well. So for example, like we just said, with Maz, with Redders, with Routledge, with H, a goalkeeper who loves to play out from the back, and we want to do that still. So for them to be taught how we want to play is not as much. They take that upon themselves sometimes as well to put that style and philosophy into play. So I've really enjoyed working with those players so far. They're excellent footballers in their own right, the older ones, as you said, and they've been really good for us here, and one of the reasons why we've been successful this season so far. But then also, like you say, with the younger ones, to try and teach them how to play, you need good older ones to set the example for them. But then the younger ones can provide that added extra sort of energy and work rate and understanding of what you want to try and do. So I think the answer is a blend of both is definitely needed, and getting that balance is sometimes so hard to get right, because sometimes you might have too many older ones in there but who understand how to play, but then you need the younger ones. But then other clubs I've been at, there's been too many younger ones to be in a men's and first team environment. So definitely a balance of both, but equally are as important as each other.
At this moment in time, we are in an enforced suspension of football in Wales due to the COVID situation. You've been training from this week. How difficult is it to prepare the players when there's no game at the end of the week? Or is it perhaps sometimes a positive thing because you can work on new stuff without, if I could use that word, distraction in inverted commas, without the distraction of a game at the end of it?
No, I understand. We're treating this period as a little mini pre-season, really. We've been, as you say, back in, working very hard, getting the fitness levels up as well in the gym and on the pitch. We had a double session today, so we're straight back to it. And I think that's important, that we're using this time to get ready for those games. We want to hit the ground running. We want to continue, the good form that we've had. I think we've 4 games unbeaten now, or 4 wins in a row, and that's really important that we're ready both physically and mentally and tactically for those games coming up. We'll have Friday, Tuesday games for a couple of weeks, and really important games to pick off where we've left. I think a little break over Christmas probably for players with their families, for staff with their families, has been great. I know for myself it's been the first time without football over Christmas for a long time, apart from probably last year with the pandemic when I wasn't working myself. But it is a good time, I think, to spend knowing that you don't have to play a game on Boxing Day. It can be good and very strange. It was quite strange, but I think sometimes can be good. But look, we didn't want the league to end. I didn't personally. My own opinion was I didn't think that the league should have been stopped. I think we could play. I think with the fans that come in this league, we could still be able to play the games as long as it's safe for everyone. And we wanted to keep playing as long as we can, so we didn't want to break. We don't want to have another break. We want to get started as soon as we can, so we're looking forward to it, starting back up again and continuing the hard work we've been doing.
And although there is the disappointment of the break, as you say, nevertheless, TNS is in a great position, 12 points clear at the top of the table, looking good for the final run-in.
Yeah, I mean, look, we try and go on the premises that, look, the team hasn't won the league in the last 2 seasons, so we're still chasing. So whatever the points total is and how much we're in front at the moment, we're the ones that are chasing Connors Quay. We're the ones that are chasing the other teams because we haven't won it for 2 years. So we're coming into, this is our 3rd season, and we haven't won the league yet. So we're still aggressive, we're still on the front foot, we're still wanting to improve and get better. And I've always said, no matter what the point score is, we want to improve and get better. And there's still a lot of work that we need to be doing. There's some real key areas that I won't tell you too much about, but that we need to improve on, and that we're working hard to improve them. Both individually and collectively as a team, but then also tactically and work that we need doing. So we're working hard with that, we know that. And no matter what the scores are or maybe the wins that we get, we still make sure we debrief properly, we still challenge the players and we try and push them, and that's what we've done this week. And I must say they've been great with that. A lot of that's come from them too. So they've been really on the front foot with that, wanting to try and get better and improve. And they know when we don't play well or when we haven't had a good performance, but maybe we've still picked up points, or maybe when we've played well but we haven't picked up the points. There's a difference between the two. So yeah, look, we might be in a good position at the moment, but I think we've got a lot of work to do, and we're treating it as if we're the ones that are still chasing and trying to improve from last season.
And in reference to improvement, we are now, of course, in January, the transfer window. Yeah. What fans want to know is, are we likely to see any movement during this month?
Yeah, well, look, there's a few areas that we can develop in terms of the squad and in terms of the starting lineup. I think that's key as well, and not just looking to recruit for the leagues, but thinking long term as well, I think is important, and thinking about for Europe next season and then the league beyond those in the years to come. So yeah, we're definitely looking at players where we're having positive conversations at the moment, but we want to make sure that we get the right players in as well, not just for the team, but to set the team up for the starting lineup too. And making sure we get, as I said before, with the other signings, that we've made the right characters in. So they've got to fit in the dressing room, they've got to buy into the culture of what we're trying to do and play in the right way that fits the TNS way and our philosophy. So if and when those players come available, then we'll look to do some business, but we'll leave it open as well. So hopefully could be some movement in January, but we're also thinking long term as well.
And although we do have provisional dates for the league to start, nothing has been confirmed as of yet. The fact that it's very much open-ended, does that have an effect upon transfers? For example, players might not want to come in if the league doesn't start for some considerable time. And also the club might want to then wait until later before it brings new blood into the team.
Well, yeah, what I would say is we're not thinking like that at all. We're doing the opposite. So we've got the dates of the games that are coming up. We're preparing as if those games are on, which we've been told they are on so far. And we're getting the players that we've got with the squad that we've got ready for those games. So there's no issue with us motivation-wise for that. In terms of the targets and that, we're treating that exactly the same as well. So we're preparing this, like we've said, a mini 2-week pre-season or 2 and a bit weeks pre-season, ready for the games. And that's the same with the targets that we're looking at. So those things don't go through our mind, because I think you need to make sure that you're, like I said, recruiting for the long term with the players that you want to get in, and if the right ones become available, they're not there for the quick fix anyway, they're there for the longer term. So whether we start on those dates or it's a couple of weeks later or a month later, however it is, we still need to plan for the future and succession plan. I think that's really important, to get your recruitment right and to think about the balance of the squad for the future moving forward. But we're certainly in the mindset in all areas ready to go on those dates.
Anthony, as always, thank you for your time talking to Club Media today, and I look forward to our next interview when we have the sponsors boards behind us and we actually have a game that's coming up that week.
We do too. Thanks for that, Rebs. Thank you.